Hello folks, welcome back. It's another episode of CamBro Conversations, and today I'm joined by previous guest on the show, David Hatt, the head coach and founder of MTN Coaching. And tonight we're going to be speaking about 10 things that we wish we knew when we started getting into fitness. 5 from myself and 5 from David. And you're probably going to have a bit of an insight into some of the trials and tribulations that we went through over the years. David, welcome to the pod, or welcome back to the podcast.
I know I'm at the first second time guest, is that right?
Yes, you are. A special occasion.
Special occasion. Totally different topic tonight though, so it should be pretty interesting and a good comparison to compare with what we kind of spoke about last time. Last time was more the business side of things, and this is a lot more kind of to the heart of, I suppose, what I do with clients or what I do with my own training and nutrition. So yes, very interesting topics tonight.
Exactly. And between us, we've got a lot of training experience now. I worked out, I've probably been lifting weights for 11 years now since I first started at the rugby club. So it's been a long, long time. And I imagine you started how long ago?
I probably was. I was probably doing some form of resistance training from, 14, 15, probably in the weights room, definitely like 15. So yeah, that's 10, 11 years. Probably a really similar time frame. But yeah, it's interesting how my training's actually changed so dramatically over the last 10 years. First, it was more of a kind of focus on athletic development and strength and power, and then a bit more into how I look. And then more recently, it's probably a bit more just, training for enjoyment and training for health, to be honest. As much as the looking good and feeling good is still a big importance to me. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess between us, over 2 decades of experience in terms of lifting weights, and a lot of mistakes amongst that as well when it comes to both nutrition and training. And what we'll do as a format then is we'll do your 5 first, and then we'll do my 5. And I know you're going to split it in terms of what is it you want to do. Three that you want yourself.
Yeah, I think I'll cover 3 things that I've really learned and that's changed for me, but also 1 or 2 things that have changed for clients as well, like the way I maybe used to approach coaching clients. And I suppose it's similar to how I approach my own training and stuff as well, but it's had a more kind of carry over to the clients, I suppose.
Yeah, we're all about practicing what you preach, as you would have heard on the previous podcast if you've not heard that with David. But let's get into it then. What was the first thing that you wish you knew when you were getting really into your fitness and your training?
I think it's going to be one that we've discussed quite a lot in depth before, and it's going to be single muscle group workouts not being the most effective and being pretty suboptimal, to be honest, when it comes to building muscle. And it's the way that myself and you trained when we first got into a more kind of bodybuilding style of training. And basically what this means, guys, if anyone isn't aware, is each day you would have chest Mondays was the classic. Maybe you'd hit legs Tuesday. It would be shoulders on a Wednesday. So you're basically splitting 5 or 6 days across the week into single muscle groups. And the reason it is suboptimal is because it doesn't really allow you to accrue as much volume across the week. So if you were to look at, maximal muscle growth, you kind of want to be hitting things 2 or 3 times a week. And if you're only hitting one muscle group once a week, yes, you will be able to, completely take it to failure, but you'll probably really struggle to then train that muscle group again, the following days after that. So yeah, it's definitely something I've learned and something I've changed both in my own training and my clients' training, going from, chest days and leg days to maybe more of an upper body and a lower body split, or even more recently doing a lot of full body workouts as well. So this definitely depends on how many training sessions you do per week.
Yeah.
If you're someone that, only trains twice a week, I would recommend 2 full body sessions. If you're someone that does 4, I would probably go with an upper lower. So it does depend on a lot of things, but if you look at any of the kind of studies done, if you look at any of the work by someone like Jeff Nipper or Eric Helms, they've been doing a lot into like training frequency for muscular growth, and it's definitely more favourable to do the full body and the upper lower workouts.
As a bit of a caveat, we both know that although that training is suboptimal, if you really love it, we know that the enjoyment side of it is quite high, but you're 100% leaving gains and progress on the table by going in and doing 40 sets of chest one day, 40 sets of shoulders the next, because you're smoked. And like your secondary muscles, like your triceps after the chest day, are going to be absolutely beat up for 2 or 3 days after that as well, which is part of the
Yeah.
problem when people get into that rut. And I know we were both guilty of having an arm day, weren't we? So
Still do throw that in now and then, but I'm actually surprised at how we did recover. Like, I also do remember, like, any leg day I done would ruin me, and it's like that was almost like a badge of honor. And it was the same with chest day. Like, oh yeah, I can't move my shoulders, and it's like that was a badge of honor. And I think it's like a learning curve that I feel like young guys specifically kind of almost need to take along the way. Not need to, but it's been good. It did teach you. It teaches you how to train hard. It forces your body to try and recover pretty fast as well, if I'm being honest. So there is some benefits, like you said, from the enjoyment standpoint as well. Like, I do love, doing a chest day, but I couldn't train now how I used to train. Like, the amount of volume that I used to hit on single muscle groups was crazy. Like you said, 40 sets. Like, I'd be doing 6 or 7 exercises for my chest alone.
3 sets, 12 reps, crazy stuff.
Now I probably, in my upper body days, I'll probably throw in 2 or 3. But I would say, like, I did still see significant growth. That probably goes down to more of the fact that I was new to training, less to do with the fact that it was a good way to train. So, yeah, no, I think, like, what's your training split right now, Colin? Like, if you were to be in a gym, I know it's maybe a little bit all over the
place. Push pull legs, upper lower, or push pull legs, push pull. Because my legs now, despite what people would maybe say on Instagram sometimes, my legs are a serious strength in my physique in terms of the size of my quads and hamstrings. My calves are terrible. Yeah. Everyone knows that. But when it comes to wearing like suits and jeans and clothes, my legs now are just so much bigger than my waist. I've got 28 to 30 inch waist pretty much year round. So it's impossible when you train legs to fit into stuff. So having done legs twice a week for 4 or 5 years, I've kind of earned the right to pull back from that. So mostly it's a 5-day a week split, push pull, heavy leg session, push pull, and I'll do calves on like one of the push days as an extra to get calves twice a week. And then, like you say, that's entirely me just making sure I've got that frequency and making sure that I'm in a position where I'm progressing. I've definitely done like you. When I moved away from the strength and conditioning stuff at rugby, I was doing those chest days, arm days, leg days, and you love it. It's great fun, but there's so much wasted sets. Like some of the sets you were doing at the end of the workout, they're like half reps, they're like partials. You're just getting a great pump, but I wonder how much of that you're actually building muscle on. Maybe just burning calories.
I think it would be really interesting to go back and train and, have the training knowledge now and see what kind of development I had in the first 2 or 3 years of training with this style of training. Because I'm a very similar training split to you. I would normally do, if I'm doing 4 days a week, I would just do 2 upper and 2 lower. And if I'm doing 5, it would be an upper, lower, and a push-pull legs. So if you look at that, guys, like if you're doing, for example, that 5-day split, upper, lower, push-pull legs, you're hitting some form of upper body movement 3 times a week. You're hitting some form of lower body probably 3 times a week if you do deadlifts in your pull session as well. So there is a much greater chance for you to basically accumulate more overall volume within each muscle group. So it is a really good way to train. So like I said, if anyone needs help with like what type of workout they should be doing, or a training split, like drop me a message after this just to run through it quickly. 2 days would be full body, 3 days probably a push pull legs, or 3 full bodies work really well. 4 days would be upper lower. What were you saying, sorry?
We've got a good episode with Lewis, who's part of MTN, who covers this in full depth. So if people want to go back to that one, they can do as well. But equally, ping David a message, and that is absolutely one of the big lessons that we probably both had as number one, where we loved that single body part session. It probably developed our love for training as well, but we definitely left maybe a little bit of progress on the table just based on the scientific side of things.
It's also one of those ones where we look back in 5 or 10 years and then go, actually there's new scientific data out that says you should maybe train like this. So I'll be interested to see what it says. Like I think there's going to be, there already has been a huge favour of full body training. Like a lot of natural bodybuilders that I follow are favouring 3 or 4 full body sessions per week. So I think it'll be quite interesting to see how that swings and how that changes over the next 5 to 10 years.
The last point on the single body stuff, before we move on, and we probably will touch on similar topics linked to it, is the injury side of things. Because I know that form towards the end of a one a week leg day where you were literally trying to crawl out the gym. There was some pretty questionable stuff going on, and you were trying to move as much as you could on like a heavy lunge or a drop set on a leg extension. You're just wondering at what point do I create some challenges, both for my muscles, but maybe my tendons, my joints. So I guess that was the other kind of part of a single body part split where you're putting yourself at risk a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'd completely agree. I think like rotator cuffs for like, any shoulder and chest day that were just ruined because you would do so much pressing work. And back then there was very little, like realistically, we didn't really do much warming up. You'd do a few face pulls and you would jump in and do 15 pressing exercises. So, like rotator cuffs, hip injuries, nothing like crazy, like bad. I've never really been badly injured, and I think you're quite similar, but just niggles that probably wouldn't have been caused if you split your training volume a little bit more across the week. That's
it. So if we get onto things you wish you were in number 2, Mr. Hatt, where are we going? We're going for a nutrition one this time, or are we still on training?
Let's stick with lifestyle, I suppose.
Okay.
I would just say one of the biggest things that I've learned in quite recent years, if I'm being honest, probably over the last 2, is the importance of like sleep for recovery, or just the importance of recovery when it comes to muscle building. Because I think a lot of people are under the misconception that when they go to the gym, they're building muscle, when in reality, when they're going to the gym, they're tearing. You're actually tearing muscles. You're creating micro tears within muscle fibers. So a lot of people say, I'm going to the gym to get jacked. Technically, you should be going to your bed to get jacked. You should be eating protein to get jacked. You should be, drinking more water to get jacked. And that's like a very big misconception. Like, you're not building muscle when you're in the gym. You're tearing muscle. It's doing the right things out with the gym that will allow you to build more muscle. And that's definitely something I spent years doing wrong. In the last podcast, I spoke about, early rises, getting up at 4:30 and grind and all this. Like, from a business standpoint, that was great. But when I look at, health, and I look at actually recovering from my gym sessions, which, if I'm being honest, were probably more intense back then, I wouldn't have been getting that great recovery because I was only getting, 6 hours sleep, and it was a good 6 hours. Like, it was all the way through, but I wasn't, I didn't have the right recovery protocols in place. So I would say if there's any kind of newbies to the gym listening to this, start worrying a little bit less about every single session and start worrying more about the other, 22 hours of the day. Like, if you're in the gym for 1 hour a day, great, but what are you doing for the other 22 or 23? And a big part of that should be sleep and trying to optimize your sleep. So like next to sleep, you'd probably be looking at hydration for recovery, and then, adequate calories, adequate protein. That's the, holy trinity of things that I suppose you need. Sleep is number one. If you're not getting sleep, you're not recovering. You're also missing out on a huge amount of like cognitive function. Like, yourself how bad you feel if you don't get a good night's sleep. So yeah, from a mental and physical performance standpoint, lack of sleep is going to affect everything dramatically, and of course recovery.
Yeah, so when you were first getting really serious about your training, like you say, you were working those crazy days that we spoke about, exercise for less, building that business, working with clients from 5 a.m. all the way through till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So sleep-wise, you were limited in your window. And although you had some time in the middle of the day, and I know that some PTs who have to work those days should try and incorporate like naps or whatever it is during the day to try and clock up towards that 7, 8, 9 hours that they're aiming for. It's a huge factor in performance. I mean, like you say, I know if I've not had my 8 to 9 hours, which I typically aim for, I notice it in work. My concentration's lower. I'm more likely to reach my phone and check it. I'm more likely to lose my train of thought when I'm having a conversation like this, or when I'm on the phone to somebody. It's obvious.
A discipline, I find, like, you don't have the same, you don't have the same integrity to yourself. Like, you'll tell yourself that you're not going to check your phone, but if you're tired, like, you almost don't. It's a lack of concentration. You don't have that same like, oh, I wasn't meant to do this, or I was meant to do this. So yeah, I think like sleep, one from a recovery standpoint, and 2 from a performance standpoint in the gym. Like, the better sleep you get, the better sessions that you'll have as well. So don't just look at it for recovery, look at it for the actual sessions that you're doing as well.
It's funny, I was never a morning person at school or at uni. When I used to have a 9 o'clock lecture at uni, I was like, oh, this is brutal. Me having to get the 7:45 bus or the train, I was like, oh, it's terrible. And that was quite funny compared to nowadays where I'm up like a lark. But I was always a big fan of going to bed early because we had a rugby coach when I played district rugby at under 16s, I think it was. And he said to us that the hours before midnight count twice. Now that's not true, but I was like, if I can get to bed at 10 o'clock and sleep, then the 2 hours before midnight are worth 4. So I'm getting like more hours sleep. And to be fair, even though it's not true, sometimes these things actually pay off. So I've always been somebody that liked like an early bedtime. I mean, don't get me wrong, at uni I was sometimes having an early bedtime during the week and then still lying until like 9 o'clock because you're just so lazy. That not lazy, but that you're kind of maybe not got the same purpose or the same routine. But I touch wood, I've always been a fairly good sleeper in terms of getting down early. The quality probably not fantastic because playing on my phone and stuff like that. And I promised the listeners that I've got somebody really interesting coming to talk about sleep on a higher level. So I'm glad David's brought that up. So in future episodes, we're going to have a doctor on to talk about sleep. So we'll that's a spoiler for anyone that's tuned in about future episodes. But yeah, I love that when it comes to recovery, David. That focus for you, and that's a big priority for your clients as well, because you ask as part of your check-ins how their sleep's been and how they've been getting on with that.
Yeah, like we take into account a lot of factors. It's not just like how's your weight, how's your week been, have you trained. It's, you know, we delve into probably between 12 and 15 different factors every single week. I mean, we get them to rate that out of, you know, between 1 and 10, and then we can see how things are, because it's one thing that some people don't even realise can lead to a lot of progress in other areas of your life. So yeah, some people, let's say for example, they've got a fat loss goal and they're maybe not losing weight every single week, but you know, their rating out of 10 for sleeps went from 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. Like, these are other things that you can monitor. And for me, being like, we always say it's fitness and lifestyle. Like, we're not just fat loss coaches and body composition coaches, it's fitness and lifestyle, and that's a huge part of someone's lifestyle. So if we can improve that through training, through nutrition, through various tips, I'll not go into them. If you're getting a doctor on, I'll let him go into that. But like, certain things, you know, can improve your sleep, then that's a huge one for us, and it's a huge one for clients, because like I said, it's got a knock-on effect to every aspect of your life, not just training.
Yeah, big time. That quality of sleep, like I say, we'll get onto that in a future episode. But again, it's not just about the time that you clock up; it's about the quality of that as well, which is so key for recovery. What's number 3 then, David? What else did you wish you knew?
I'm torn here. I'm gonna go a kind of hybrid answer. So the first thing that I wrote down was the role of carbs and fats being less important for body composition results than people think. And the second, I suppose it's linked anyway, is the importance of good quality food sources. So they do obviously tie into one another. What I mean by this is, for so long in my own training, I used to track every single gram of fats, proteins, carbs, and of course my calories as well. Don't get me wrong, like I've got in pretty good shape. I've got very lean before, like definitely like well under 10% body fat. And that was done through, you know, tracking meticulously. But in the recent years, I have, you know, I've done a little bit of reading, I've done a little bit of research, and a lot of the stuff coming out is suggesting that providing calories and protein are matched, the actual quantity of carbs and fats mean very little when it comes to body composition goals. So I dieted last summer again, and all I done was stick to 3,000 calories roughly and 180 protein. Didn't look at carbs and fats at all, and I just, you know, made up my diet of the usual kind of food sources. So that was quite interesting, because I dropped weight at a very similar rate, and I didn't, you know, notice. I actually found it much easier, because what happens when you start focusing on carbs and fats so kind of minutely, you get dead caught up on, you know, you can't eat certain things because it's not fitting your fat intake or your carb intake. Yeah. Whereas if you've got that little bit of balance and freedom, your food choices become a lot more flexible again. So I think it's what we do with clients now. We focus on 2 factors for nutrition usually, and it's just calories and protein, which has been working phenomenally well, because it gives the clients that freedom as well. You're
absolutely right. And I've been the same as you. And I guess that's one that we probably wish we knew when we started to get more serious. I guess when we were young guys and we were just smashing in the protein and the calories, we probably weren't too aware of tracking in the early stages. Well, I certainly wasn't anyway. But when we started to get that knowledge about if it fits your macros and tracking and MyFitnessPal, I was exactly the same. I really cared about, did I go over my 60 grams of fat, or did I have my 340 grams of carbs, when really it's that total calorie number, and then the protein for muscle protein synthesis, and then kind of maintaining or gaining muscle. It's important rather than exact numbers of fat or exact number of carbs. It's not massively important.
What I would say to add on to that, guys, is like if you're looking at performance, then carbs and fats do matter. If you're looking at, you know, optimal levels of sport performance, or if you're an athlete, you compete in something, then yes, carbs and fats do matter, and the timing of them actually matters a lot more as well. So that's one thing to consider. But if you're someone that's just looking to shed a few pounds, you're looking to get a little bit leaner, on the opposite, you're just looking to add some muscle, but you're not, you know, crazy serious about it. Focus on calories, focus on protein. If you're looking to take things that other level, then yes, maybe do look at carb and fat intakes as well. But providing you're eating a fairly balanced diet, like you should be consuming an adequate amount of those. When you look at carbs, you can actually live without them. Like you can get by without them. I wouldn't suggest it. But like when it comes to fats, you do need fats for brain health, for hormone functions, and for a load of other things within the body. So I would say, you know, fats should be, getting a healthy fat intake should be still a bit of a focus. Don't just completely throw it out the window and make up your diet full of just carbs. But yeah, when it comes to body composition results, like calories and protein are ting, like that should be like where your kind of really big focuses are on.
Absolutely. I've got a significant carbohydrate bias when it comes to having tracked over the years. So my food choices generally will be lower fats, because you would always go for like the lean mince, the lean chicken breast rather than chicken thighs. You would go for lean or clean carb sources that typically don't have a lot of fat with them. So rather than buying like roast potatoes that are pre-made at the supermarket, you're making your own roast potatoes, or you're having rice or pasta with low fat sauce with it, in terms of like a tomato rather than the cream based sauce. So my automatic choices with regards to fats tend to be lower. So when I'm not having like a strict fat or carb distribution, I've always kind of favored carbs, and I know that my training responds better to it. So when you're talking about performance, I do think that's an important caveat, where I'm trying to eke out that extra couple of reps on a movement that I've been rinsing and repeating for 8 years. Then it does matter how many carbs, or if I'm favoring carbs over fats. But equally, I know people that respond better to having a higher fat diet for, like you say, hormone health, brain function, but also some people respond a lot better digestion-wise to fats than carbs, and vice versa. So there's a lot of caveats, but
that brings me on to, I suppose, what I want to touch on as well, and in the sense of the importance of good quality food sources. And for me, I much prefer a higher fat diet, not based on gym performance and not based on aesthetics, but based on like cognitive function and brain health and how I actually feel I perform. So like I'm a big fan of having a fairly like ketogenic breakfast. Or fasting, and then having a really big lunch that's just like, I eat steak and I eat salmon like all day. So I have steak most days for breakfast, like steak, eggs, broccoli. So just like complete fats, that little bit of, I mean, I don't really count veggies as carbs that much, but that, you know, high fat intake for me seems to work a lot better for my concentration levels, for just general like staying switched on. So I do favour like a much higher fat diet when I am like got maybe a really intense amount of work to do. But I would say when I'm training hard, I'd probably bump my carbs up and, you know, lower my fats a little bit more. So yeah, like that's just to touch on this real quick, like food quality should be more of an importance, and it's only been more of an importance for me probably over the last 18 months to 2 years, because as you know, like I used to be able to diet on, you know, 3,500-4,000 calories, and I could fill them with absolute crap. Like I used to eat like
KFC, I remember you used to put KFC in your Instagram story and you were getting lean.
Yeah, and I did, because my output was so high. So like my steps were so high, my general movement was so high that I could actually fit in a lot of that food, which was fine. And that's what I'm talking about. That's for body composition. But if I look back, I could have felt a whole lot fucking better. I could have performed better. I probably would have slept better. I would have had lower stress. I wouldn't have had like bad acne, things like this. So that's what you need to look at for food quality. Like you need to be looking at good quality food sources, rather than but I can fill it through KFC and McDonald's, gummy sweets or whatever. That's fine, but that should make up a very small % of your diet. And I used to say, yeah, like 80-20, I follow the 80-20 approach. See, when I looked into it, it was probably like 60-40 or sometimes 50-50.
That's the funny part. That's the funny part, David. Really funny.
Because my calories are so high, and you'll know this as well. Like, if you are someone that can, consume a fair amount of calories with minimal fat gain, you do find you'll tend, after a period of time, you'll tend to favour higher calorie food sources because they're easier to eat. Like, trying to eat 4,000 calories of clean food is brutal on your digestive system for one, but it's just brutal to actually eat that amount of food. So there's a balance. Like, food sources are more important than what a lot of people put focus on, for performance, for general health markers that people don't look at, for lowering stress, like I said, even things like dealing with anxiety, like, and depression. Like, the food sources that you do consume can contribute to bettering or worsening that. So it's something to be aware of. Don't just just because you can lose weight on eating these food sources doesn't mean you should.
That's so true. And just to touch on your point there in mental health, there's a number of studies, and the guest that we had on episode 22 was an anxiety specialist. Eating high sugar ice creams or low glycemic carbs does have a link to potentially increasing anxiety or poor mental cognitive function, which is one of the reasons that you see quite a lot of keto diets for patients who have struggled with mental health. And if they're doing that and getting results, then there's probably something to it.
Out there, like, I'm an advocate of ketogenic diets. Like, see, from a health standpoint, I think they're absolutely amazing. The results some people get on them, don't get me wrong, you don't need to go keto to get results, but from who was it I was watching? I think it was an Ed Milet podcast. He had a brain doctor on, like a neuroscientist, and the guy was like, everyone that comes to him with anxiety and depression gets put on a ketogenic diet, pretty much like that. And he says, without any medication, most of the adverse effects are, like, not cured, but they get a lot better very quickly. Like, your brain is made up of a lot of fat. Like, the actual tissue of your brain is pretty much just fat, so fueling that with fat is beneficial for it. So like, I'm a fan of kind of high fat foods: eggs, steak, salmon, olive oil. I eat a lot of pumpkin seeds, Brazil nuts, these kind of things. So these are things that, if you're maybe not so worried about calories and you just want to eat healthier food sources, I would begin by looking at higher fat healthy food sources, because I've noticed a big change in how I feel and how I perform from a mental standpoint with that. And like, that's definitely something to look into if you're in the corporate world and you're maybe not as fussed about body composition or training, but you want to, like, function well in your job, then something to look into.
Yeah, so to summarize that point 3 there, calories and protein are the most important for body composition, but equally the quality of what you fill those calories with is super important, both for your performance, but also your cognitive function in your day-to-day. And although we've segued a wee bit there about anxiety, depression, and managing that, it's still a super valuable topic. And it just makes me laugh when you and I are able to have these chats and you're looking at some PTs that are still posting online. Got 2 spaces open for my new online coaching block, and we're talking about this, David.
I think it's also important to highlight the fact that pretty much everything that we touch on tonight will tie into another subject, which ties into another subject, which then ties into, like, everything goes round in cycles. So, like, your sleep affects your mood, which affects your nutrition, which affects your training, which affects your recovery, which then affects your sleep again. So, like, all these things are linked into each other. So if you can try and nail, like, just one or two of these things, whether it's sleep or stress or food quality or food quantity or, protein or whatever it is, like, they'll have a knock-on effect. Yeah. Like we discussed as well, like, protein is very filling. So if you're eating a lot of, high protein foods, you're probably going to have less cravings, which is going to lead to better dietary adherence, which is going to lead to better fat loss results, which is going to lead to lower stress levels, which is going to lead to better sleep. So like, they all do tie into each other.
Yeah, it's never ending. And like you say, you can get momentum by nailing one of those. What's up at number 4 then, David?
So I'll try and speed this one up a little bit. I thought I would give you 2 things that have changed quite dramatically for me from a client perspective. And of course, this is the same with my own training, but it's more what I've noticed with clients. And the first one, or the fourth one, I suppose, here, is increasing your NEAT, or increasing your general movement from day to day, being a lot more important for fat loss than exercise or exercise selection specifically. So what I mean by this is, a lot of people really get caught up on how many gym sessions they do a week, rather than how much they've actually moved that week. And when it comes to fat loss goals, which is probably where my niche lies, training is very important, don't get me wrong, but generally just moving more is of the utmost importance, and it's something that not a lot of people put an importance on, and they're more like, yeah, I've done 8 sessions this week. Yeah, but you've only hit 5,000 steps each day. So that's one thing that I've noticed. Like, as soon as I started changing this with clients, I was like, oh, they're losing £2 every week. They're losing £2 every single week. All I've done is give them a step target. So yeah, I'd say that's number 4. Steps are very, very important for fat loss goals.
Yeah, they're huge, David. And I've spoken about this so many times in the pod that we live such a sedentary lifestyle. And I dropped a figure on the pod with Talia Bentley that the average UK step count when I checked in November last year was 4,000 steps. So,
Wow.
But the thing is, David, people who work in a 9-5 office, they work in an office 9-5, they get on the trainer, they get in their car, they go to the office, they sit down at their desk until lunchtime. They sometimes don't even leave their desk. They sometimes go to the canteen, or they go out to get a sandwich, go upstairs. That's 1,000 steps. And then they're at the desk from 1 until 5, and then they get in the car, and then they go to their couch. Or even if they do train after work, they go to a gym, they do a weight training session like they do, they're ticking their boxes, your session, and then they go home. So they're not accumulating any neat, like you say, they're not getting a walk at lunch, they're not walking before work, they're not commuting on foot or on their bicycle or whatever. It's a really sedentary lifestyle, and you can see why people have such low calorie maintenances, because if you don't move, there's no reason for your body to need calories other than that 1 hour bout of exercise that you do. And I guess I've seen so many people who would consider themselves really healthy that train 5 or 6 days a week, but they don't really move outside of that. And it's guys that have a decent amount of muscle, but they're dieting on like 2,000 calories because their step count's like 3,000.
Yeah, and that's why you find most personal trainers can lose weight fairly quickly and fairly easily. It's actually less to do with their knowledge and more to do with the fact that they've got a very, very active job, because we both know a huge number of PTs that are fucking clueless, let's be honest, but they get pretty fat loss results because they move a lot and because, you know, they weight train and they eat loads of protein. But yeah, like I would say like steps is such an underutilized tool still. There's just not enough emphasis on it, and it should be probably one of the first things that you address if you've got a fat loss goal.
Yeah, just the last point on that before we move on. One of the worst things that I see PTs do, and I saw it firsthand a couple of times last year and I actually don't like when this happens. I actually feel a bit uncomfortable when somebody shows me what their PTs ask them to do and tries to almost run it by me on Instagram or WhatsApp, and I think, right, you're paying them, you need to ask them this question. But what I see quite a lot is, right, you've got your 5 weight training sessions and you've got 3 sessions, 20 minutes, 30 minutes on the Stairmaster or on the treadmill for cardio, but you've got no step count. So the stupidest thing you can do is set somebody a really high cardio session. And you see it quite a lot. People have like if they're prepping for a show or a shoot or whatever, they have like 5 or 6 cardio sessions a week for like 45 minutes, an hour. So they are dying in terms of like energy levels. They're on the lowest food they've ever been on. They're training, they're putting all their energy into their thing. Your body will auto-regulate and you will try and sit down at every opportunity. You will take the lift as much as possible. You'll take the escalator rather than the stairs. Your body's clever. It's going to try and conserve energy. So if you have a cardio target, but your coach hasn't assigned you a step target, then they are missing the forest for the trees. They have completely missed a massive point.
The big picture. Yeah, and I think that's, touching on that, it's something that I feel people don't adjust often enough either. Like, as you know, when you start to diet down, like the lower in body weight you get, usually the lower in calories you need to go. One way to keep your calories higher is just to increase your steps. And last year, like again, when I dieted on, like I said, I dieted on 3,000 calories, 180 grams of protein. I didn't change my calorie count for a full 8 weeks. All I done was increase my steps by 1,000 each week. Started on 10k, and when it got to week 8, I was doing 18,000 a day, which is quite a lot. But I dropped 6 kilo in 8 weeks, and 6 kilo for someone like me is a decent amount of weight to drop. So yeah, you do need to, if you've got a fat loss goal, you've kind of got 2 options. And for me, it's not increase cardio; it's increase steps or decrease calories, and that's what we tell clients. It's very rare that we add a huge amount of cardio. If I'm being honest, I would much rather my clients just run another 5k steps or 7k across the week or something.
You can be sociable doing it as well. You can go walk with your your partner, your mum, your friend, or you can, or like I do in the morning, I'll go out a walk and I'll make a phone call or I'll listen to a podcast. It's a great time to do it.
Yeah.
So number 4, all about the NEAT in terms of just what you're doing in the gym.
Yeah.
What's number 5, David? And again, this is a client related one, isn't it?
Yeah, both client and I think it's just interesting for people to kind of, it's just interesting to highlight, to be honest. The fact that you don't need to be doing the big 3 when you're training. Now, what I mean by the big 3 is squatting, bench pressing, and deadlifting. And a lot of people seem to be, I was one of these people, stuck in the fact that they need to be doing them. They're like the holy grail to weight training. Like if you're in the gym, why are you not squatting? Why are you not benching? And why are you not deadlifting? And the more experience I gain, the more I realise that some people shouldn't ever deadlift. Some people probably shouldn't squat. Most people can bench press to some degree, but based on mechanics and based on genetics as well, or based on experience, based on, you know, injuries or mobility, sometimes you just shouldn't be doing these movements. And I myself used to make all of my clients do them. Doesn't matter what their goal was. I remember training a client that was about 120 kilo, and first few sessions I was like, okay, let's squat and deadlift. Like, she couldn't move. Like, walking for her was an issue, and I was trying to get her to do a pretty complex movement with a barbell. And I remember you've always been quite, not anti squat and deadlift, but you never really had them featured heavily for a long period of time in your workouts, because you, for the right reasons, you were like, I don't really feel them where I want to grow, and you know, they put me under a huge amount of fatigue, so you didn't actually get what you wanted from that exercise. For me, like, I put them in because my goals were always like strength and athleticism and stuff, so it made more sense. But you've always been a little bit more bodybuilding style and more about aesthetics. Would I be correct saying that?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I remember you used to give me a lot of hassle when we trained together. You'd be like, I can't believe we're not doing barbell bench press, and I can't believe we're going to train legs and we're not going to do barbell squats or front squats. Because, like you say, I just, we'll get on to why I didn't really bench press when we get into my 5, but the squat side of things, there was a period where I squatted all the time with rugby, and I never had big legs ever. I wasn't growing big legs because all I was doing was squatting, and I just wasn't stimulating. I was moving weight. I was reasonably strong at it. Like at 16, 17 years old, you're doing 100 kilos, and that's like a big thing because you get 2 plates on the barbell. But my legs weren't big because I wasn't stimulating them particularly well. I wasn't doing lots of accessories that actually were hitting my whole leg. So when it came to like actually growing my legs, and I decided I would do things like my kind of compound movement was a stiff leg deadlift with dumbbells, and then I would do like a hack squat, or I would do a Smith machine squat. And honestly, I used to get pelters for doing the Smith squat, but my legs came on leaps and bounds because I was just locked in, and I just took it there for 4 or 5 sets with quite significant weight by the time I got good at it. But barbell squats, I used to just come forward, and it was probably a mobility thing, my ankles or my hips, and I've never really explored that, although during the lockdown I've been doing a lot more goblet squats just due to the equipment I've had access to, and it's been a lot better. But like you say, to really, if your goal is body composition, the big 3 play a role depending on maybe from a time efficiency perspective in terms of getting bang for your buck. But in terms of actual muscle activation, there's lots of different options for hitting those muscles.
Yeah, I'd completely agree, and I think it's very individualised, because some people, Dale Burke, that works within MTN, his legs grew massively through, like, you know, continuous back squatting, whereas I've always been able to squat like a very decent amount. Like, I've always been able to squat a decent amount, but I've never had big quads. So like, I used to muscle the weight up with my lower back, with my abs. Like, I wasn't actually targeting what I thought I was wanting to do, which was, you know, build my quads. So yeah, like I definitely, I will always probably squat, bench and deadlift because I enjoy them still, and I've got, you know, pretty good mobility, and I don't use my squat as like a muscle building exercise. I just use it as a general, like, this is hard, this is going to challenge me exercise. And deadlifts, you know me, like, I just love deadlifting, so that's always been something that I've kept in and will keep in. But yeah, I think especially with clients, like, I'm very wary of who should be doing certain movements, and I was always, you know, making people do conventional deadlifts, conventional squats, whereas now I'm a bit more like, you know what, Bulgarian split squats will suit them a lot more. They'll get a much deeper range of movement. They're going to actually activate a lot more muscles. Or maybe for deadlifts, the amount of deadlift variations, like, I almost always use a trap bar for beginners now. Like, always, it's such a good movement, and it's so fucking easy to learn. Whereas looking at how to deadlift properly, it's actually quite complex. And if someone's coming to me for fat loss and I'm spending 8 weeks teaching a deadlift, they're a bit like, I've only lost 2 kilo. I'm like, yeah, but you can deadlift 120. They're like, my goal wasn't to deadlift. So you need to look at your client's specific goals, and exercise selection needs to be coherent to that, I suppose.
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on there, David, and that's certainly been reflected in my training when that's been my goals. Don't get me wrong, you need to have some sort of variation of movement that you swap in that mimics it in some form. So with a barbell squat, you need to either leg press or hack squat or with a deadlift. Yeah,
love them.
I know there's horrible movement as well, Bulgarian split squats.
Yeah.
So we'll get on to mine then. So I made so many mistakes and so many errors as well. And part of the beauty of this conversation, I think, is that hopefully, depending on what stage you're at, or if one of these resonates with you in terms of it's something you're currently doing, we're going to tell you that it's probably not something that's worthwhile, and there's another option for you. And the first one of mine links in a little bit with what you were talking about when it comes to calories and protein. So when I started to get quite into the gym, probably 6th year at school, when I was really trying to get bigger for rugby, I was going to play. I had one more year left of junior rugby, and I was like, I need to get bigger before I move up to the men's team. And I found out that protein was the important macronutrient. I didn't know it was a macronutrient, obviously, but I just knew that protein was the important thing to eat. So I was eating a lot of protein, but I had no consideration in terms of calorie balance. I just knew that I had to eat lots of this protein, and I knew some of the things that had protein in it. So chicken, protein shakes. I even thought things like porridge, which is a carbohydrate, had protein in it, because the information out there was really limited, and I was kind of just getting advice off the guys at the rugby club gym or guys that were at school. And I used to think that it was pretty much a free macro, so that you could have as much protein as you wanted, or you could have as much as you wanted, and you wouldn't gain any fat. You would only gain muscle. Now, there is some evidence, and you and I spoke about this offline, that protein metabolizes a little bit differently to carbs and fats. And even if you have it with excessive calories, it's less likely to be stored as body fat, which isn't a caveat. However, for the vast majority of us, if you're overeating, you're probably overeating carbs, protein, and fat. And protein is not a freebie, and you actually need a little bit less than you need. So my lunch at school, and probably first year at uni, I would buy these packs of plain chicken from Asda. It was either 250 grams or there was a 400 gram pack, depending on how much money I had. And I would eat this pack of like cooked cold chicken, 250 grams or 400 grams, which would be like either like 45 grams of protein or like 70 or 80. And I would just scan that down and I was having lots of other meals similar to that with like tons of protein. And I just didn't understand that I needed to have lots of carbs as well to fuel my training. I needed fats. I needed to monitor what my total intake was for the day. And I was just convinced that the more protein I ate, the more muscle I would gain. So that was a big error. Whereas now, what kind of intakes do you have your clients on, David? You'll set them a goal based on their body weight?
Yeah, so for females, we typically go weight in pounds multiplied by between 0.8 and 1.1. The higher end, the 1.1, is for those that are kind of a little bit more trained. So let's say you're 140 pounds, multiply that by 1.1. It's, I don't know, probably 155 maybe. So, and then for males, we typically go 0.9 to 1.2 multiplied by their weight in pounds. So yeah, usually like someone like me, I weigh 80 kilo. Again, I'm strange. Like I take my own weight in kilo, but I figured out everything else in pounds.
I'm the same.
But yeah, I'm typically anywhere between 170 and 200. For me, I'm happy with, but 200 is actually quite high. Like it's unnecessary. I just enjoy pretty high protein foods.
It fills you up, doesn't it? But that's a helpful recommendation for anyone. So if you take your weight in pounds and you times it by either 0.8 or 0.9 or up all the way up to 1.2 or 1.1, then you will get a rough range for how much protein you should have per day. And anything above that is probably excessive unless you've got a preference for doing that to keep you full or for a particular goal that you've got. But yeah, it's not a free macro like I thought it was, although it does
Yeah.
metabolize slightly differently as a caveat.
Yeah, like you said, like the actual thermic effect of it is a little bit, bigger. Less so than a lot of people believe, though. There's a lot of evidence coming out to unsupport that to an extent. So basically, like, for your body to burn carbs and fats, it's a little bit slower than to burn protein. So you'll basically burn protein a little bit faster. So that's what Colin means there by it's less of a bad one to overconsume on, almost. Yep. Like you're going to gain a little bit more benefit from it. And the other thing I suppose we could touch on real quick is like muscle protein synthesis, which is, the optimal amount of protein that you should be consuming. And this is like a very argued subject, but that's why, like if Colin was maybe only having a small protein amount with breakfast, but then he's getting, 70, 80 grams later in the day, that's not actually that as optimal as it could be for building muscle. You should be looking to split your protein intake across the day. So if you are eating 150 grams of protein, you will get more of a benefit from having 5 meals of 30 grams than you would from having 3 meals of 50 grams. But these are very intricate. Like you don't need to worry that much, providing your overall calories, overall protein, like we said previous, are hit, you're golden. But I mean, if you're really serious about building muscle, well, don't listen to me because I ain't got that much, but you should probably be splitting your intake, that little bit more evenly.
Yeah, spot on. So the second one for me is not a nutrition one, it's more of a training one. And this was one of the ones that actually caused me problems pretty much up until this day, because when I started, I did far too much pressing. So we spoke about with David the chest day Monday. Even outside of that, when I was doing full body stuff with strength and conditioning with rugby, there was a lot of bench press, there was a lot of overhead press, behind the neck press, and even like just standing single dumbbell press and stuff like that compared to pulling movements. So we did quite a lot of pull-ups, but we hardly did any rows. We didn't do an awful lot of heavy pulls off the floor, so heavy deadlifts or barbell rows or lat pull downs or kind of cable rows and contractions. Yeah. So my pressing strength for my age versus my pulling strength was significant. So I developed quite significant imbalances between my chest and my upper and mid back. And there was no external rotation exercise for my shoulder or my rotator cuff. And I effectively ended up with a bit of that kind of rounded, we've all seen the guys in the gym that have that kind of rounded forward shoulder look with an overdeveloped front and an undeveloped back. And it's not aesthetic, and it's also terrible for performance, posture, and just general health. And I got a real impingement in my shoulder. So basically, the front of my shoulder was coming round and in towards my chest, and it meant I was getting impingement. Playing a contact sport like rugby, disastrous because you're hitting your shoulder all the time, using it to tackle or be tackled. And I also played scrum half primarily at this point. So the role there is you're passing the ball from the floor a lot of the time, and your hand comes up the back of the ball and across in a repetitive motion, which basically just meant that your shoulder was coming round and round and round. So I would wake up the next day in agony. But I was going to the gym 4 days a week and still just pressing and pressing and pressing. And it was so bad for me. And the thing that I learned was, in order to be in a healthy position, particularly in the lifestyles that we live, where we're sat down when we're working at our desks, or we're sat down when we're driving or commuting on the train, is that you need to train your back and do a lot more pulling movements than you do pressing, because you're going to create imbalances. And I don't know if you ever struggled with that, David, but my front of my body was far stronger than the back of my body was. It's the opposite now because I've rectified it and I've worked really hard on it, but I really struggled with that.
Yeah, it's not something I've experienced massively. Like I was a big favourite of doing chest and back sessions as well, so like combined. And I think from like always, squatting and deadlifting, putting a big focus in, you develop a lot of upper back strength through that as well. So no, it's not something I've really struggled with. Like I've got a decent chest and back. It's probably like weaker body parts for me would be something like shoulders or calves or something like that. So now, like I've never had that kind of major imbalance, I wouldn't have said, but like I know so many young guys specifically do. And the same, actually, we could talk about females in the sense that they train so much glutes, and that is it. You do need a well-balanced physique from like a overall development standpoint. And actually, for females that want to grow your glutes and to grow your bums, like working on your upper body is going to help massively, because it's going to allow you to actually lift more across, like, certain exercise. You'll be able to squat more if you've got a stronger upper body. You'll be able to deadlift more if you've got a stronger upper body. Hip thrust, yeah. Actually, hip thrust as well, because you need to look at your upper back supporting yourself.
Yep.
As well. And if you've got a stronger upper back, it's a better shelf, and it's going to make things easier. So yeah, I think from male and female, guys specifically probably need to pull more and train legs more, and females need to focus still on upper body, even if they just want a nice bum and nice abs. Upper body work is of an importance though.
Yeah, it's that whole rounded program approach that we spoke about when we were talking about training splits. And for me, I made a big mistake and basically got to a stage where I did one chest movement and one shoulder pressing movement a week for 2 years.
Wow.
And basically just had to work on my back. Now my back's a massive aesthetic strength now, and a performance strength as well, in terms of the weight I can move versus. So if I train pull with somebody, they're like, "Oh, you're pretty strong for your weight." But if I train push with somebody, I'm not as impressive. But it's definitely helped. And like I say, the lifestyle that we lead, where we're all sitting, we tend to have a bias towards our shoulders rounding forward. So having a strong, powerful upper back is definitely going to translate well into posture and general health as well, especially if you're somebody that sits down all the time. So if we move on to my number 3, and I'm surprised we didn't touch on this, David, but you probably had this as well, unless you were really well coached at a young age. But progressive overload. I knew that you wanted to get stronger. That much was obvious, because in the gym you want to move more weights. You want to move up from curling the 10s to curling the 12s, because that'll impress the girls at school that you can do that. But I didn't understand the different methodologies in order to generate progressive overload, because there's far more than just being able to do the 12s rather than the 10s. Yeah. So I wish that I'd known about being able to increase volume, being able to increase the weight, being able to increase the reps I was lifting, being able to increase this number of sets I was doing, having better tempo, improving the form to stimulate the muscles better, or even small things like reducing the rest time that you're resting between sets, so you're getting more work within your allocated time or your allocated session. So for me, I wish I'd known earlier about progressively overloading my training, because I probably could have got stronger, and then with that, more results quicker.
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree. I think because I was training for sport, I didn't know what progressive overload was, but I always had weight targets, and you were probably similar when you were saying, going up from the 10s to the 12s. So yeah, I think a lot of people, even if they don't know what progressive overload is or how to complete it, or not complete it, but how to utilize it, people do it anyway because they set themselves like, oh, I want to be able to squat 100, deadlift 120, bench 100. So they do set themselves those targets, which is good to work towards. But yeah, I think a lot of people are caught up on using lifting more weight as the only way to progressively overload your training. And now more than ever, with the current climate and people doing home workouts, they've had to get creative with regarding progressive overload. So they've had to, work on doing high volume, work on technique, working time under tension is just the most brutal way to train. Or actually isometrics as well. Like, again, Dale's Instagram is full of, towel isometric exercises, which you guys should check them out. So yeah, like there are a lot more other ways to progress your training rather than just increasing weight. With that being said, from like an ego standpoint and from like a feel good factor, there's nothing better than being able to hit a PB. You'll find less people boast about, I got an extra rep on a single arm row, so I can now do 13 with 40 kilo, rather than I can bench 120 kilo, I can deadlift 300 kilo. Like, people are more inclined to boast about 1 rep maxes, but I think boasting about 8, 12, 15 rep maxes is just as important as well. So don't just look at those lower numbers for strength.
Yeah, when it comes to aesthetics, one of the things that definitely served me well was completely detaching my ego from a 1 rep max. I couldn't tell you the last time I tested 1 rep max, but I can tell you right now in my logbook what my maximum is for like reps with a 50 kilo dumbbell. Yeah, like I see in the 12 to 15 rep range, I come alive. That's where my performance is
Yep.
based, because I hate training anything under 6 reps. So I'm like,
I'm
what can I do?
yeah, I'm a
I
fan.
know
I'm
you are.
all fan virus.
I know you are. So yeah, progressive overload, that would have definitely helped me. And although I was appreciative, like you said, of wanting to move up a set of dumbbells or put another plate on the side, if I'd known the different methodologies that I could use, like adding a couple of reps, adding another set or whatever, then I think I could have progressed a lot quicker. Number 4 is nutrition related. And if you haven't made this mistake, you're very lucky, because the misinformation that was available through things like Men's Health or even YouTube at the time, on particular, if you stumbled across the wrong sources, was around the kind of good foods and bad foods. And even if you don't consume decent sources nowadays, the mainstream media, like your Daily Mail articles or your Scottish Sun articles that go viral on online or in the newspaper, are all about bad foods, or cut out sugar, or cut out fat, or cut out white carbs. And the mistakes that I made were particularly around carbs. And I know we've spoken about the benefits of fat, but I was scared of particular carbs for a period of time, in terms of, I would say to my mum, like, oh, I don't want white bread, or we can have brown pasta, but not white pasta. And we can't have white rice or basmati, but we can have whole grain. And this was just such a silly thing. And the other one that was linked to carbs was, I would have no carbohydrates on rest days, because I wasn't using them if I wasn't training. And although we've spoken about the benefits of like fats, and I definitely found that when I was eating higher fats on the rest days, like cognitive function was great and I could get a lot of work done, and you never crash, because sometimes after carbs you can have a bit of a slump. I was so bad for like certain foods being scared of, and you leave a lot of performance on the table, and you also look so flat when you avoid certain carbs. And equally, when you do a diet like that, or you do an approach like that, when you get access to that food, one, your body doesn't like it in terms of digestion. It really struggles, and you are going to be on the pan dealing with that. But also from like almost like a binge eating, or like maybe a binge would be a strong term for it, but like an overeating or a struggling to like control yourself when you get access to that food, really bad. So I would be like terrified of white potato. But if I went to a restaurant and had chips, I'd be like, oh, goodness me, like get me another portion of them. And I just couldn't stop, because you were deprived of it. And it's a really unhealthy mindset. So I wish I knew sooner that there's not really any bad foods. Like you say, we want to favor those whole food sources, but ultimately it comes down to calories when we're talking about body comp.
Yeah, I've definitely went full circle with this point, if I'm being honest, because I was in a very similar mindset of there's white bread and sugars and things like that are bad for you. So I definitely did eliminate them in the very kind of early 1 to 2 years of training. And then I found out about flexible dieting and if it fits for macros. And I was like, wow, I can actually fit this food in and get the same results.
And you took the piss.
In the last 2 years, I'm probably swaying back to like from a like performance standpoint and from a general health. I suppose I'm probably more health conscious now than I was than I'm body composition focused. So I focus on like how I actually feel after eating foods, whereas I didn't give a shit in the past. As long as I could eat them, like I didn't really care. So I think I've went full circle. I don't eliminate them, like I can always incorporate things like that within my diet, but I would be more inclined to choose cleaner sources on the most part now than I was 3-4 years ago. And I think you're quite similar. Like you've got a very high quality food diet. Like you eat very good sources, but don't get me wrong, you love council pops and you love things like protein bars. I don't touch anymore because they just don't agree with me. Whereas some people like live off them.
You're so right. And I think, we're almost lucky to have had these mistakes. And I know we're saying to people that are listening to this, hopefully if you're maybe making these mistakes at the moment, or you're yet to get to this stage, then hopefully don't make these mistakes. But we're quite lucky from that experience to have known how it feels to do these different things, like how it feels to do these daft chest days, how it feels to eliminate these foods. Because do you know what? When I was eliminating those foods, I was testing my willpower. And you know what? I was pretty adherent, apart from the times that I would go to a restaurant. And that adherence and ability to just do stuff that's quite fucking hard,
Yeah.
transfers over. Because see, when you get the information that it turns out you can sometimes
Yeah.
have these foods, you're like, wow, this dieting game's a whole lot easier than I thought. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to belittle people and tell them it's easy, but it's easier than it can be.
I think that transfers to training as well. Like, I used to train like a fucking demon. Sorry for my language, but like I used to train so hard, and I don't now, and I can still get similar results. Do you know what I mean? So like, it kind of shows like, and it shows the dedication stuff that I had back then that I probably don't have or need now towards my training. But yeah, it definitely teaches you a lot about yourself. Put yourself through these sessions or put yourself through these diets, and then maybe you learn and you realize you don't need to do it that way. But you've also learned how disciplined you can be when you need to be. So no, I think that's a very true point. So as much as we're trying to steer you guys clear of maybe not making these mistakes, you'll make your own other ones anyway that might teach you something that you can teach someone else. So like they're always, especially for like me being, I suppose you're an educator as well with, you know, social media and content wise, but like myself trying to educate, you know, 400 or 500 clients, it's really good to have made these mistakes myself. But there's loads of things that I know that someone's taught me because they've made those mistakes as well. So it is good, you know, to get a different person's perspective.
Yeah, that's such a good point, David. And I guess to go back to the point around the diets that we both choose nowadays, where it's predominantly whole foods, even though we know that you can incorporate white bread or protein bars is probably an extreme example. But yeah, I know there's days when from a digestion perspective, a protein bar is the last thing that I need because sometimes I can't handle it. Other days goes down fine. But equally, when you're on higher calories, sometimes you do need to have the kind of the more white rice or more, because it's easier to get down.
Agreed.
If I have 150 grams of uncooked white rice, I can get that down easier than I can get down 150 grams of uncooked whole grain rice because the fiber in the whole grain rice will kill me. But I can get but equally that kind of is earned, not given, based on the amount of calories that I have to eat.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point to touch on, in the sense that if you are on lower calories, your food sources naturally should be cleaner. If you are lucky enough to diet on higher calories, then you've got more freedom, you've got more leeway. So, and it's the same if me and you were to diet. Like I guarantee at the start of your dieting phase, there's more room for, you know, bad food sources. I say bad in inverted commas, but there's more opportunity to have them. And then when you get to the last, you know, 2 weeks of your dieting phase, it's probably just, I want to stay full, so I want to eat high fiber, I want to eat lots of veggies, I don't want to consume food sources that will not fill me up. So it's more, I think that's an interesting point. You do change the food choices based on the stage that you're at within your dieting phase.
Yeah, hunger comes into it, like you say. Last one for me, although I'll give you a bonus one at the end that David and I had a laugh about earlier. The last one for me is back to training. And there was a period, probably would have been 2013, was the first time that I'd kind of was decided I'm going to get really lean. Before that, I'd been like, I'm going to get massive for rugby. I'd had a few shoulder injuries that I've spoken about. And I got to the end of my rugby career, and in the summer of 2013, I decided I'm going to get a six pack. I'm going to get these really good abs. And I just trained every day. I trained 7 days a week, and I can't even remember exactly what my split was. It wasn't a bro split, but it was like legs and shoulder press movement, back and biceps, arms and delts, and then or side delts and rear delts, and then legs and chest movement, and I would just repeat that. And I just didn't have a rest day. I remember I trained for something like 6 or 7 weeks straight because I was like, I'm going to do a 6-week prep, although I didn't know what a prep was, but I decided this was a prep. And I just trained every day. And even as I got more knowledgeable, there was a slight probably exercise addiction element to it, although I'm not going to belittle anyone that has something as serious as that. There was an element of that to me wanting to train every day because I felt that more was better. If I was resting, then I wasn't going to get bigger muscles. Whereas we've spoken about the recovery element. Your second point was all about sleep, recovery, and looking after yourself. I was flogging myself 7 days and wondering why sometimes I couldn't lift more on the lunges this week, because I'd done lunges 3 times that week already and I'd gone to failure, so I was broken.
I think that's a great point, to be honest. And I think it's It's one of those ones that you just learn when you're younger, because you can also handle more training like that when you're younger. Yeah. Not that either of us are particularly old. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're still pretty much in our prime for, if we were to be doing sport right now, we'd be in our absolute prime. But yeah, I remember being, between 15 and probably 19, between 15 and 19, like, I was the same. Like, I used to train twice a day. I used to do all these crazy sessions, run to the gym, do legs, and run back. Like, how? I have no idea. So yeah, I think that's an important factor in the sense that you do need rest days. How many is dependent on what stage you're at in your journey. It's dependent on how you train, the style of training that you do. But yeah, I think like most young guys go through that, and it's like you touched on. It's an enjoyment factor. Like, I like the gym, one, from a social standpoint. I like it because I feel good after I've done, and you're improving on yourself. So it's like you're making progress, and you know what I say, Colin, progress is happiness. So I think it's definitely like, if you enjoy it, like, go for it. But could you maybe be using the gym sessions, if you're going to go every day, to do something a little bit more beneficial, whether it's doing a cardio day and, or maybe doing some mobility on one of the days, or doing, I don't know, you could be doing plyometrics or something one day. I don't know. You could be doing different things. It doesn't necessarily need to be 7 weight training sessions.
That's such a good point, because if you do want it, like you say, you want to go from a social perspective for your mental health. I mean, during this period, we're certainly seeing people struggle to deal with the gym closures, because it was their space and their time to deal with it. But like you say, socially as well, if you're going to go and train 7 days, like David said, make sure that not all 7 are weight training sessions, because you're not going to make the progress you need to do. Do a plyometrics day, do a mobility day, do a cardio day, do an engine day, for whatever you want to call it, that makes you feel like it's a worthwhile day and a worthwhile session. Do something different, because you're not going to thank yourself for doing another arm session or another chest session or another back and bicep session, because it's not actually going to benefit your muscle growth, because they need to rest, they need to recover.
Yeah, and I mean, cardio can actually be a really good tool. I was very anti-cardio back in the day, but cardio can be a really good tool for recovery from weight training sessions. So don't dismiss that as a style of training, because it's not going to make you gains. Your heart is a muscle. Like, if you can improve on your cardiovascular health, and you can improve the size and the strength of your heart, it's going to then have a carryover to your weight workouts. It's Coach Eugene, I don't know how you say his name, Coach Eugene Tiao, done a really good video on cardiovascular training for weight training, and for you to benefit from it from a weight training standpoint. So I'll leave it on one of your comments or something, Colin. People can have a look at it. It's a really good video.
It fully translates though. If you've got a good cardio engine, you're going to be more efficient in that 12 to 20 rep range, or you're going to be efficient on set number 3 of the 12 rep set, because you're not absolutely gassed from the first 2. Maybe your muscles are taxed, but your cardiovascular is still ticking over and ready. So that point definitely overlaps with the second one that you spoke about around sleep, recovery, and looking after yourself, because ultimately it's not just about how many days a week am I going in there and smashing my weight sessions.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's us covered our 10, David, quite a lot within that. And I guess is a little bit of a bonus one. I told David this, but we decided not to give a whole section towards it. But a chap that I used to play golf with, and he might well be listening to this, he's a really good guy. He was a couple of years older than me, and he was really into his gym. And he told me that if you were going to train legs in particular, you were going to play sport that day, you shouldn't masturbate or have sex or basically orgasm, because it would reduce your performance, particularly if you were training legs, because if you were orgasming, your legs would shake or something like that, and they'd be weaker, and you wouldn't be able to produce as much force. And David, I swear to God, I built a habit, and everyone loves habits, where I would never even think about doing something like that on a leg day. And even now, I probably don't do it, just because I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's really important I don't do that.
It's like an ingrained habit. Yeah, I said to you earlier when we spoke, like, I need to find the research that I looked into, but it's basically like male and females are different on this subject, and females can actually benefit from, reaching climax or having an orgasm before training, because it actually increases their test levels. I think this is what it is. Yeah. And males can not benefit. It's one of these like weird science programs. I also think I remember reading that one of them has changed as well. So that's maybe something for us to all look into after this. Does masturbation help with weight training? That can be a podcast episode, mate. You can get a sex specialist on for that.
I'm gonna have to
But
see when I'm googling, David, to find somebody to come on for that. People are gonna be like, "What have you been searching, Colin? That is disgusting."
Who would actually be qualified? It'd probably be a sports scientist rather than a sex specialist. Or
If
anyway.
anyone knows the answer to that or has heard about this particular theory before, please get into David and I's DMs on Instagram and explain like what the logic is behind it. Point us in the right direction. So speaking of finding you on Instagram, David, for those that haven't connected with you before, where do they need to go for you and for your business?
Well, I've changed my handle actually since last time. So for my personal brand Instagram, it's just dhatt HATT_MTN, and for MTN's Instagram handle, it's MTN_coaching. For our website, just www.mtncoaching.com. You'll find a lot of kind of products and services on that, guys, as well. Since the last podcast, all we really had to offer last time was online coaching. We've kind of developed across the board. We've got a lot of different projects on the go. We've got a lot of different info products. So definitely check them out if you want any advice on maybe what you should be doing for training, whether it's fat loss, muscle building. Then reach out, drop me a message. I'm more than happy to jump in a quick call if that's what it needs, or just send you in the right direction of what you should be doing.
Perfect, David. All of that will be linked in the show notes below if you were too lazy to write any of that down. If you're still with us at this point and you've enjoyed the 10 things that we covered or the bonus 11th as well, pop a screenshot on your Instagram story, tag David, tag myself. I cannot wait for your feedback, and thank you all for your continued support of the podcast. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.